Yeah, listen, anybody that's in this field is a great player. But you know when the guys have gotten out of the pool play, you know they're playing really strong, really solid golf, and you know it's going to take.
Golf fans think Matt Kuchar has simply faded, but the truth is far stranger. His 2025 behavior signals a shift that insiders saw coming long before the public did. And today, I'll reveal what's really happening to his game, his schedule, and the future he's quietly building piece by piece. So let's begin. Career recalibration. Performance had always been the metric by which golfers were judged, and in 2025, Kuchar's results painted the picture of a player whose game remained intact, if not dominant. His leaderboard footprint showed flashes, some top 30 finishes, intermittent bursts of crisp approach play, late birdie streaks that reminded everyone he still carried veteran danger. The full list of his 2025 results, easily traceable through ESPN or CBS Sports, read not like a swan song, but like the stats of a player managing his resources with precision.
People are upset that Matt Kuchar won $1.3 million, and Matt Kuchar only gave him $5,000. So let's talk about that. Matt Kuchar in this caddy, that was not his normal caddy. He was outsourced. They had an agreed-upon rate. $1,000 to the caddy if he missed the cut, $2,000 made the cut, $3,000 top 20, $4,000 top 10. He actually won it, and he gave an extra $1,000. So the caddy agreed to the terms.
Observers dissecting his performances noticed that his short game, long one of the cleanest on tour, remained reliable. Highlight packages from events like the Sanderson Farms Championship caught him dialing in delicate approach shots with the same calm expression he had always worn. His closing birdie setup that week briefly reignited nostalgia, the collective reminder that this was still the same player who had once contended everywhere. Yet the numbers also displayed an inevitable slide. Driving distance softening, greens in regulation percentages dipping, the unmistakable signature of a career subtly shifting from power to strategy. That tactical evolution became a visual motif for broadcasts. There he was, laying up where younger players muscled drives, choosing angles over aggression, guiding the ball rather than forcing it. Analysts framed it as the wisdom arc, the stage where experience becomes weaponry. And when paired with the occasional appearance alongside his son Cameron at family events or exhibitions, the narrative deepened. The competitor still existed, but now threaded through legacy and mentorship. His role in team-style settings had long sparked interest. Clips of that now iconic 57 at the PNC Championship resurfaced often because they embodied what his career had become. Flashes of brilliance wrapped in warmth, skill paired with fatherhood, competitive zeal softened by perspective. If golf careers could be measured in tone rather than trophies, his had clearly shifted into a chapter defined by longevity and craft instead of chasing distance-driven leaderboards. The takeaway from his 2025 scorecards was simple. He was still good, just different. Serviceable enough to contend, strategic enough to survive, emotionally grounded enough to keep showing up. In the world of aging athletes, that cocktail was rarer and far more compelling than a win. Quiet turbulence. What hit hardest in 2025 wasn't a missed cut or a poor Sunday. It was the quiet, heavy note of personal loss. Early in the year, Kuchar's father, Peter Kuchar, passed away while traveling, and the news rippled through both local Florida outlets and the golf community with a subdued ache. Those who followed Kuchar's career knew the significance instantly. His father had been present throughout the early chapters, including that memorable caddying stint during the 1998 US Open. The passing shifted something in him, and though he rarely addressed the grief directly, the silence became its own story.
My favorite thing is how solid the putter is and how well it rolls off the face. Tip for you guys that I use to help is I do some one-handed putting. So when I get started, I like to just have the putter up against my left arm and then just hit a few as if I'm just brushing. I feel like I'm using a paintbrush, and I'm just gonna brush this ball to the hole. Hope that helps.
Analysts noticed that his schedule tightened even further after February. Instead of filling open weeks, he appeared only when he chose to appear, carrying himself with the kind of composed emotional restraint that often follows family loss. It was as if golf continued to serve him, but only on his own terms. The public saw glimpses, not spoken declarations, but subtle gestures, moments of focus, small acknowledgments of a man reordering his internal landscape. Family inevitably became the emotional spine of his narrative. The recurring clips of him and Cameron at the PNC Championship resurfaced with new weight, offering contrast between past joy and present fragility. Watching the two navigate a course together in perfect sync, that viral 57 round, took on new resonance. It wasn't just nostalgia, it looked like a reminder of why Kuchar still cared about competition at all. Beyond the emotional undercurrent, he leaned into community. Quiet charity events, junior clinics, sponsor-aligned outreach projects. None of these made national headlines, but each one reinforced the subtle shift in how he carried himself. For a player often perceived as tidy and measured, this new blend of presence and privacy added unexpected dimension. The turbulence of 2025 never erupted into spectacle. It simmered. It reshaped his choices, deepened his motivations, and reframed the question the public kept asking. What happened to Matt Kuchar? The answer, beneath the professional gloss, was that he was navigating grief with the same steady hands he once used to guide wedges. And that made every reappearance feel softer, rarer, and strangely more precious. Legacy shift. The conversation around Matt Kuchar's 2025 season always circled back to the curated, almost artistic selectiveness of his schedule. Observers noted that his year looked less like a grind and more like a portfolio. Intentionally sparse, strategically concentrated, built around sponsor exemptions and signature events where visibility outweighed volume. The Memorial exemption became the clearest example. A veteran player being invited into one of the season's premier fields not because of rankings, but because of long-standing respect, name recognition, and the value he still brought to television windows. That pattern reflected a subtle commercial truth. Sponsor exemptions were not charity, they were business. By dropping into tournaments with deep corporate roots and local community ties, Kuchar continued to generate precisely the kind of content sponsors wanted: polite charisma, dependable interviews, clean-fitting brand shots, and those steady veteran rounds that played well in early broadcasts. In many ways, a single appearance from him delivered more polished coverage than a haphazard mid-pack result ever could. Industry watchers knew this dance well. They had seen other veterans use the same blueprint: fewer events, more targeted exposure, maximum value per week. With fields at signature events often smaller and guaranteed for television, these were ideal stages for legacy players. Kuchar fit neatly into that tier, not chasing FedEx Cup points so much as maintaining relevancy, strengthening relationships, and choosing moments that preserved both health and reputation. The footage told the story even more clearly. Those sponsor week interviews where he calmly explained why he selected certain tournaments painted him as a man crafting the softer edges of the final act of his career. The community events around those tournaments, junior clinics, sponsor meetups, charity pro-ams, reinforced the narrative that he wasn't fading. He was repurposing. Kuchar's 2025 schedule wasn't thin, it was deliberate. It signaled a shift from pure competition to legacy maintenance, a transition from touring warrior to polished ambassador. It was the kind of quiet, calculated transformation that viewers often missed, but insiders immediately recognized as the hallmark of a veteran picking his final rhythm. Sponsor strategy. Kuchar's schedule now reads less like the rat race of a full-time pro and more like a carefully orchestrated dance with his sponsors. Rather than grinding week in, week out, he is cherry-picking his appearances, leaning heavily into sponsor exemptions and signature events where his name still carries weight. These aren't random invites. They're strategic, business-savvy deals that keep him visible to brands, fans, and the golf world, without demanding bleed-dry travel or the toll of a 30-tournament grind.
This putt is for the major. His name etched on the trophy and the millions of dollars. You gotta wonder what's going through his head.
At 47, he's doing a very veteran thing, using his reputation to generate value rather than just chasing FedEx Cup points. Those sponsor exemptions aren't just favors, they're mutually beneficial contracts. Kuchar shows up, sponsors get their TV-friendly presence, pro-ams, hospitality activations, and goodwill publicity, and Kuchar gets to align his playing life with his evolving purpose. He's no longer just a competitor, he's a brand asset. He's also selectively targeting signature events, tournaments that offer prestige, exposure, and guaranteed coverage. These high-profile weeks function like audition tape for his future. He's not just playing for the paycheck anymore. He's playing to maintain relevance, to stay in the conversation, and to build a bridge into whatever comes next: broadcast, mentorship, or senior tour life. Those sponsor-driven starts serve double duty. They feed his competitive drive, but also act as long-term investments into his post-playing career. This model lets him be very efficient: fewer starts, maximum impact. He doesn't need to be everywhere. He just needs to be in the right places. He picks the events that benefit both his sponsors and his personal brand, and by doing so, he avoids the burnout of constant travel and intense points chase. The structure of his calendar now suggests he's playing with one eye on the present and the other on the future, carefully balancing performance, legacy, and business relationships. In doing all this, Kuchar is mastering a new kind of golf life, one where competitive fire isn't extinguished but repurposed. He isn't just making tee times, he's crafting his afterlife in the sport. And it's a quietly brilliant pivot, re-anchoring not just as a player, but as a legacy asset, a sponsor's dream, and a future elder statesman of golf. Grief undercurrent. If the schedule revealed strategy, the emotional pulse of 2025 revealed something much deeper. The passing of Peter Kuchar in February cast a long shadow over the season, and even without direct statements, the influence was unmistakable. Those who traced the timeline saw how his withdrawal from the WM Phoenix Open and subsequent silence created a subdued contour around the year, a soft outline of mourning that shaped every competition that followed.
And even embraces the expectations his last name brings.
Oh, Eagle falls for the Kuchars. This is some unbelievable run.
I like knowing that I have a name where people are gonna draw attention to it. I think it just gives me that little extra motivation just to keep playing well, keep my head up, keep smiling.
Rather than leaning into public vulnerability, Kuchar adopted a quiet resilience. He played on, but the tone shifted. Analysts noted how he moved through practice rounds with a heavier kind of focus, not sadness necessarily, but a measured stillness. The broadcast booth occasionally referenced the loss with gentle commentary, framing his appearances not as comebacks, but as steady acts of continuation. It added weight to even the smallest on-course gestures. In contrast, the family-side footage that circulated online, especially those evergreen clips from the PNC Championship, provided the emotional counterweight. Watching Matt and his son Cameron dissect fairways together, smiling through birdie streaks, seemed to highlight the living legacy Peter had once contributed to. These moments offered viewers a form of narrative symmetry: a father who once walked beside him, a son who now shared the ropeline memories. The community appearances of 2025 deepened this emotional thread. Kuchar had always participated in clinics and charity events, but this year the tone felt different. Observers sensed that he was leaning into the grounding comfort of these smaller, more intimate engagements, choosing spaces where the noise of professional golf softened. These weren't headline-driven obligations, they were stabilizers, small acts that kept him connected to the sport in a way that felt personal rather than performative. By the time mid-season rolled around, fans who asked, "What happened?" weren't referring to his game at all. They were puzzled by the tonal shift, the quiet, the tenderness that seemed to sit just behind his interviews. The grief wasn't explosive, it was atmospheric. It shaped him the way fog shapes a landscape, gently, persistently, unmistakably. Future mutation. Speculation always surrounds veteran players nearing the twilight of their PGA Tour runs, and with Kuchar, the projections came in threes. Keep grinding, pivot to PGA Tour champions, or drift into broadcasting. Observers suspected he was quietly preparing for a hybrid future, the kind of three-lane career path that let retired pros stay visible without burning energy. His selective starts, polished sponsor interactions, and increasingly mentor-like presence all hinted that he wasn't so much slowing down as mutating into a version of himself built for longevity. Broadcasting emerged as the most obvious avenue. Kuchar had always carried that composed, camera-friendly demeanor that networks loved. His ability to break down shot strategy, his relaxed delivery, his clean public image, all of it positioned him perfectly for analyst tables. Those Sponsor Week interview clips weren't just PR opportunities, they were auditions. They showed a man who understood pacing, clarity, and tone, all of which viewers consumed easily. The Champions Tour hovered in the background as well. With eligibility approaching, analysts agreed he could be immediately competitive in a circuit that favored course management, wedge nuance, and patience, all strengths he still carried. The Champions Tour often served as a second wind for players whose PGA Tour speed had slowed, but whose competitive instincts remained razor-sharp. Kuchar fit the mold perfectly. There was also the ambassador route, a soft landing many veterans embraced. His 2025 sponsor exemptions and charity alignments felt like early signals. A player didn't participate in that many community events without understanding the long-term value. Legacy roles, mentorship programs, golf course projects, junior instruction, these were the seeds pros planted when building post-playing personas. Taken together, they formed the picture of a future not marked by disappearance, but by expansion. Kuchar wasn't drifting away from the sport. He was branching outward, reconfiguring, mutating into an iteration of himself that didn't rely on birdie streaks or power stats to stay relevant. Matt Kuchar hadn't vanished. He had transformed. Less frantic touring, more legacy shaping, and a quiet emotional resilience beneath it all. The question wasn't, what happened? But, what's next? And whatever form he chooses, his reinvention makes the next chapter worth watching.